Welcome to the next part of our three-part series exploring the Panjwai Massacre of 2012, as seen and experienced by James Alexander and Brandon Chong. It is important to note that the views and opinions expressed by James and Brandon do not represent the opinions or views of the Panjwai podcast. Any retelling or clarification on the account of the hosts are simply for the purpose of clarity and do not reflect our personal opinions. We have gone to great lengths to conceal the identities of others involved, and in no way intend to levy accusations or suggestions of guilt towards any individual. For more information, including a copy of the official 15-6 investigation and other supporting documents, visit www.thepanjwaipodcast.com/massacre. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to part 2 of our interview with James Alexander and Brandon Chong, discussing the events leading to, during, and after the massacre committed by Staff Sergeant Robert Bales in Panjwai, March 12, 2012. Last episode, we talked about James and Brandon's experiences leading up to the incident, their interactions with Staff Sergeant Bales, and kind of like set the stage. And what we wanted to kind of start with today, before we led too much into the story, was we want to kind of give you like kind of a geographical orientation of VSP Belambai and where it was, because we've talked a little bit about the geography of the Horn in episode 1. But Belambai has this kind of a unique situation in that it's not one of the cops that was assigned to the battalion that held the area. So it wasn't like Mushan, Lion, or Talakan, Zangabad, Sperwangar, Kenjikak. It was its own thing. It was part of the Special Operations Task Force. And honestly, we barely even knew it was there because it was so well hidden. But if you and we'll put the map up here, but it's also going to be on the website. If you use Sperwangar as a reference, you go north out of Sperwangar, you hit a road called Hyena. You take Hyena to the west. It follows you down the Horn, and then the next turn that you can make goes to Fob Zangabad. And Fob Zangabad is the battalion headquarters for basically the Horn of Panjwai. All the cops in the Horn of Panjwai report to Zangabad. If you get to Zangabad, you get to the front gate, you can either go straight in or you can make a right on a road. If you make that right and you follow that road and you continue down that road past a few intersections, you'll run into Belambai. It's about, a mile from Zangabad?
Yeah. About a mile down Charlottetown Road. That was the name given to it.
Charlottetown. Okay. Yeah. And we'll make sure we put that up there as well for reference. And Belambai is kind of the end of the line. There's there's another road that intersects, and it's kind of on a corner. And we'll put that up as well. Also important is the orientation of some of the villages. So Alkazai, am I saying that correct?
I think you're asking the wrong. We call it Alakozai, but that was, we heard multiple ways of saying every village, even Belambai, so.
Yeah, it's Afghanistan. Panjwai, Panjwai.
Exactly, yeah.
Alkazai was a little bit to the northwest of Belambai, and then another village, Najaban, to the south.
Yeah, we called it Najibien.
Najibien, see?
Yeah, exactly. So
feel free to correct me as we go through all this stuff too.
Yeah, no worries.
So those were two of the major village clusters, and there was also the Dawood home, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was just a little bit to the east of Najibiad.
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea, and probably the distance from Belambai to Alkazai about 1 kilometer, and then also 1 kilometer from Belambai to Najibian. So about 2 kilometers between each of those two villages, with the Dawood home being very close to Najibian. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it's about yeah. But because you're taking the road, so it could be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter.
Sure. Yeah, there's not a direct route, but
well, direct route would be very precarious.
I'd rather go the direct route than walk the road.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to kind of give you an idea of where this was, and so this is sitting definitely to the west, further west into the Horn than Sperwangar is, further to the west from Zangabad, but not as far west as Talakan. And like as we mentioned before, the VSP is in a village. It's not like an American cop where generally they have the cop and then there's all this standoff before there's anything else. You know, you guys could hop a wall and be in somebody's house.
Yeah, we had no white space.
No white space, nothing. You were right. There's a road right out front, 2 roads right out front, really. Grape rows on the other side of the roads, and then houses on the other wall. So you were in a village, which is going to be really important later when we talk about what happened afterwards. But we wanted to kind of cover that geography before we really got into anything deep. And then what we would really like to start with today is the events of March 12th, 2012, as they kind of unfolded before your guys' eyes. And then after that, we're going to kind of walk through what the official Army investigation reported as far as, Bales' movements. But we want to start with what your guys' experience was. So, James, if you wanted to start, last time we saw Staff Sergeant Bales, he was sitting in front of a fire.
Right. And that was
sucking
the
on a
night
cigar.
Of March 10th.
Yeah. Can you describe what happened the morning of March 11th? And I think I've said March 12th a few times, and I apologize. But it was March 11th, 2012.
3:15 in the morning. The B hut door. 3:15 in the morning. The B hut door swings open, and one of our NCOs comes in and he says, "Hey, we need 100%. We need 100% accountability." And we're like, okay, first of all, it's 3:15 in the morning. We've never done this before in this fashion. He's never come in the B hut demanding anything ever. Never, ever happened before like that. And there's usually people on guard, so that was kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually a place you would start, right? Usually you would go tell the guards folk, and then they would come down. You'd see one of our own come into the B hut, but these folks lived in the Chews, so it was very different. Comes in, and we're all thinking it's for weapons. So we start grabbing our weapons to read serial numbers, because that's what we're thinking 100%.
Yeah.
We're not even thinking personnel at this point, right? We're thinking strictly weapons. And so he does a quick head count, make sure we're all there, and goes, "Okay, go back to bed." You're like,
was there anything else unusual about his appearance or his mannerisms?
Okay. Yes. So he was freshly showered, freshly shaven, wearing a uniform with all the right patches, which was it's like the most bizarre thing to witness, because it's Afghanistan. Showering and smelling good in the morning time kind of doesn't necessarily make sense, especially when you're going to work out at 5 or 6 a.m., which was what their workout schedule usually was.
Right.
So that was strange. He was kind of, there's no way to tell that he had been drinking, but he was kind of, just his mannerisms were very plotting, I would say, probably a little bit slower than you would imagine, especially for what he was demanding. And he didn't really seem like he was clear in what he was asking us to do, because once he got a head count, he never gave us an explanation at all to what was going on. It was, okay, go back to bed. And it was all right, well, first of all, number one, I'm not going back to bed. I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to go in my room, and I'm going to look at my roommate, who was like, "What the hell is going on?" I'm looking at him "I don't know, dude, that was weird." And he's talking to me. And then maybe 2 minutes later, he comes back in, and I forgot to mention that there's lights involved in this too. Usually the B-hut light was off. The central lights were off at night. But he came in and the first time and flipped the lights on, So it was just this very strange, stark thing,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was just okay, get to your battle stations immedially. That's what it sounds corny to say that, but that's exactly what it was. It was scramble to your do your battle drill of going to exactly where your fighting position is. And so,
it was also weird for him to be dressed like that and shaved, because you guys had kind of gone somewhat native with the SF guys. Yeah. I mean, you were wearing your beards, and you weren't always wearing your patches and stuff like that. And at 3:15 in the morning, why would you?
And we were very civilian top, military bottom, Crocs was a standard thing to walk around in. That was acceptable wear, because we would go on patrol so much that would be when you'd have to wear your good stuff, but we also didn't have the facilities for every guy to have laundry and to do like to make sure they had the right stuff. So it was like you kind of had your like going out like patrolling, and then you had like your home wear, like you're gonna get in a fight in a home wear too, but it was just like different, you know what I mean? It's more acceptable. Yeah. So
now, Brandon, were you in the same room?
I was not. No, I was across the hall.
Okay, so it was. I mean, do you have a similar experience?
It was pretty much the same. He came in. We needed 100% SI. At the time, I was a team leader, so I had an M9. So when he was like, "Hey, you guys can go back to sleep," all up my stupid ass did was put my pistol under my pillow, or put my pistol under my pillow. And I was like, "All right, this will do something." And then 2 minutes later, he's like, "All right, everybody get spun up." And that's when we went to the trucks, and first squad was getting ready to go out to go look for him because they were shooting off flares and all that. And then he came back to the gate.
Well, we were skipping a couple steps there.
Oh, my bad.
So you guys got called up to your battle stations. Now, for you two guys, that meant going to a predetermined position.
Yeah, we had a truck. So we had a great system. I would get in the front and start it up, and Brandon would get in the back and start the gun up almost immediately. And so the truck would go up the ramp so that the truck would basically be on and the weapon system would be on at the same time. And so as we like crested, we'd be able to like have full field of view and be able to see Alakozai specifically. That was where we would be. That was our orientation.
So what was going through your guys' head at this time? Like when you're getting the truck up and running and you're going up on that ramp, were you just expecting to get hit? I mean, what were you thinking?
We had taken mortar fire once in the morning. It was we only happened one time, and that was it wasn't really, they tried to bracket us basically using the road, Charlottetown Road, and it was really unsuccessful. They weren't really able to get us on cue. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe something like that is going on. Like there's going to be more to this. Like we're going to take IDF. So close the hatches in the truck, obviously. Close the doors, make sure the doors are closed. But yeah, exactly. But other than that, I was like, I genuinely thought that someone had gotten kidnapped off the base. And the reason why I thought that was because only a few weeks earlier, we had a discussion with one of the chief who had said basically that there was some sort of intelligence that, the Taliban could overrun the base, that there's like a possibility. So we had to have prepared go bags in the eventuality that happened, because we're just a VSP and we have like 2 HESCOs with some sea wire on top. Like as a single gate, as a single wall, you know what I mean? So like, so they were like,
blow a hole in your back wall?
No, we had like central points where we would have to gather, and like it was like non-ANA people. So like the idea would be like, it was just the US forces would gather together, and we would have like a liaison with the ANA, but like our job was to not gather with them and move towards like the HLZ area. That's where we were supposed to gather.
Gotcha.
Right. So it was like our initial gathering point, whatever. But he went over like, if we were together, how many, like we would basically like a mini SEER class on like what we should do, which I'm not going to divulge any of that information because I don't want it to, get into the wrong hands or whatever. But there's like a certain, group or set of tactics that we should employ should something like that happen. Right.
Yeah.
That was like, believe it or not, that was forefront in my mind. Living in a beehive in the middle of Afghanistan, the Taliban going to come in, we pack go bags with like MREs, some water, C4, some 203 rounds. Like, I mean,
if somebody came in and woke me up at 3:15 in the morning and said, get on your trucks, the first thing in my mind would be that the talk is about, or whatever's about the cop or whatever's about to get overran, or at least hit real hard,
Right. And having the vision of Alakozai, you're kind of like looking for anyone through the grape rows, right? So like Chong and I are both looking at the screen, flipping from white hot to black hot polarization levels to try to find any kind of like heat signature or movement, anything in those fields. Cause we're thinking, my God, like something's going on. And then the flares start coming, like more, they kind of change direction. And it was like kind of like, hey, we spot him. Somebody said, hey, we spot him on the net. And it was like, okay, all right, well, what, all right. So we've either spotted or we know what's going on. Because we're still in the dark. Like the net is a scrambled mess you can't understand anything that's going on. And it's just like, okay, it's indescribable because people are like hopping on each other and it's like, like it's just madness, chaos.
It's chaos. It's pure chaos.
Pure chaos, like complete chaos. Like, because once the net got silent and somebody said, I see him, I don't know what, it was like somebody clicked over or whatever, but it was like, okay. And it was like, all right, now we're trying to like fill in like what is, and I'm just looking at Brandon the whole time like, dude, what is going on?
I'm pretty sure I had to put on auto scan at one moment just to like comprehend, so we could just like talk it out.
Like auto scan on the Crow is the ultimate.
Oh yeah. Gucci, that's Gucci living. Yeah. But
so you guys are in the truck. You're trying to figure all this stuff out. Obviously somebody knows that something's going on. You're thinking either someone's kidnapped or the cop is about to be overrun or about to hit IEDF. You don't really know. And then you hear that on the radio. We see him, all these flares. So when you hear them say, we see him, does that kind of change your opinion about what is going on? Obviously at that point, you don't think you're being overrun anymore.
I'm thinking the first thing that crosses into my mind is that Bobby's such a tough nut that he just killed his potential kidnappers and is now like returning to base. Like,
so why did you think it was Bobby? Why did you think it was Bobby at that point?
Because when they did the 100% accountability, I knew it was us, right? And I knew that like all the infantry dudes were accountable. But if it was an SF guy that they were looking for, the SF dudes would have come in. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
they would have handled themselves.
Exactly. It was just like the way it was like, okay, it was either Bobby, one of the other NCOs or another NCO that I didn't see. They all lived in the cans. So I'm thinking potentially an A&A guy snuck into the cans, beat up somebody and drug them, snatched them up, exactly, and drug them out the gate. Because that could be that's 100% possible. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
That's within the realm of possibility in my mind. So
yeah, certainly.
And Brandon, was that kind of what you were thinking too? I mean, because obviously you guys are talking in the truck. You're not sitting there in total silence. So
yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was this. It's just the whole day was just chaos and confusion, and that's just. I mean, I basically remember it the same as that. Is really no other way to put it, I guess.
Did you get the idea that people above you knew what was going on though, or did they seem clueless also?
Especially when we got pulled into defect, we didn't have official numbers. Nobody really knew what was going on. They didn't know what villages are coming from. So at least for the first couple hours, nobody really seemed to know what was going on.
Right.
They didn't even know. They didn't know if it was just like Taliban doing it, if it was soldiers doing it, or
right.
I mean, everybody was confused.
So you guys had been in the truck for how long you guys were sitting in the truck while all this was going on?
I mean, I don't have an accurate timestamp. 2 hours.
I mean,
2 hours or so, yeah.
Until it got light, I would say. I mean, it was just about to get light. That was the craziest part about it. It was like, yeah.
And you said you felt like at least that the higher command, while you were in the trucks, you felt that the higher command knew that there was a soldier off the base, but not necessarily what was going on. Whether was he kidnapped, was he, had he snuck off? I mean, Bo Bergdahl wasn't even that long ago at that point. You're talking a couple years, so. A Dust 1 is a pretty serious thing, no matter the reason for it. It's an American soldier, so unaccounted for.
And it was also the first time we had shot loom rounds at night like that. So, which obviously, right? Because why else would you do that?
Yeah.
So that was like another indicator, like, okay, we're actually, trying to either spot targets or we're looking for someone. Point target, either way. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, okay.
And that kind of stands out to me as well. The use of the flares, the calling on the radio, we see him.
Right.
And when you go back and look at the 15-6, you can tell that much, much, much earlier than this, they knew he was gone. And they knew that there was an American soldier outside the base. They didn't know who it was, but they knew there was an American soldier outside the base. So it all kind of lines up in the fact that the people above you kind of probably knew what was going on, at least to an extent that there was an American soldier off the base. So you guys eventually got the order to leave the trucks. That's correct.
Right. We left the truck up. I remember this part because we left it on auto scan. That was the exact thing to do. And someone came by. That part was not on the net. That part was someone physically walking up to the truck and opening the door and being like,
yep.
Like basically and you know what, that part, I could not tell you who it was, but it was like an NCO, obviously. Most likely an SF dude who was doing the rounds to be like whoever was on guard to make sure that every station was good and that like everybody got the word instead of like putting it on the net. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, Okay. Which made sense to me, you know. So
Yeah. So you got out, you left the auto scan on, which is the ultimate sham move. Auto scan with the crow.
yeah.
Anybody that's deployed with a crow knows that if you see a truck and the radios are quiet and there's a perfect scan,
yeah,
it's nap time in that truck.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys got out of the truck and then you went to your predetermined guard positions. Is that correct?
Yeah, the word was to basically continue back to the guard shift because the infantry guys still had guard until like I believe 7 or 8 in the morning per like the usual battle rhythm. So I happen to have guard at 6. So I just said, hey, I'm going to go up there early. And it was like probably 5:45, maybe like 5:50 when I went up there. And I just was sitting up on guard, relieved the dude up there, and was just able to see pretty much everything from there, from that vantage point.
And at this point, did you know at this point that Staff Sergeant Bales was back on the base?
I believe that somebody called up on the net that like he's at the front gate, or we've got him at the gate, or there was some indicator that like they've got him at the gate. But the next time that this is the first time I saw Sergeant Bales was from the Op Center roof, and it was looking down, and he was covered in blood, like caked onto his arms. He had blood like kind of on his face a little bit, on his neck. His hands were like basically like just red, like completely red. And I was just like, damn. Yeah, you know, his clothes were like hanging off of him, and he was breathing really, really hard, like grunting, like because it was like you could tell he was like really straining for breath, like his adrenaline was kicking so hard.
Sure.
That like he was just like having like seriously pumping. So
did he wear his kit? Did he just roll out there with a M4 and a few mags? I mean,
yeah, I didn't see a kit. That was the thing that I was looking for. I was expecting like a plate carrier or something like that. I didn't see that, and I was like, okay, he had his M4 slung. But obviously that was taken off of him. We found about that later. You know, once he got to the gate, he gave up his weapons, you know. I mean, he took all the stuff off of him. But his clothes, and then he asked for the computer, which was kind of crazy. He tried to smash the computer right there. That was kind of wild. Like they were like, he's like asked for the computer and they brought it to him and he tried to grab it out of the dude's hand and smash it on the ground. It's like, what is going on? Yeah.
But they were able to prevent him from doing that.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, he threw it on the ground, but he didn't like jump on it and like destroy it the way he wanted to, like monkey smash. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Smash it, but yeah.
I mean, why was he doing that?
That's the thing. I like literally. I'm like, at this point, I'm still thinking this guy just escaped. I'm thinking this is like some Taliban blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking this is like he's killed all of these people, like his captors, right? That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking that this is, you know, what he has actually done, right? So for him to smash the computer is when I started being like, okay, more is going on.
That's
because
weird.
This is like something really key that I have to stress is that when I was looking from the guard tower, I am like above the action and also looking down, and I'm maybe 20 meters away. And it's getting light, but I can see perfectly fine, right? And so he's being treated as if like he's not in handcuffs or anything. Like he's being treated like calmly. So I have no reason to suspect that he has done anything, but just based off his mannerisms, other than the like adrenaline pumping, which would make sense if you escaped captors, and then all that. So like literally when he grabbed the computer, I was like, oh, okay, this is like, something is up, right? And it's like, and I sat there with another soldier, and we smoked a whole pack of Parliament lights, which is not advisable for anyone that wants to like
special. Whoa.
Yeah, it was just like we just
probably got one Marlboro worth of nicotine out of the whole thing.
And he sat over where the 50 cal was, which is the typical guard position, and I sat where the 240s were in the where the minigun was, Chong, looking down, and that's where I was able to see from the med shed and the shower.
The med shed's where they put him.
Yeah, so like I'm literally right there, and they pulled the. So they pulled him, they stripped him naked right there outside, you know, like pulled all his clothes off on this, because we had these wood planks built because the mud was so bad that you couldn't like walk anywhere. So they stripped him naked on this wooden plank outside, basically.
Who's they? Is this SF or?
2 SF guys stripped them. Like they were
Okay.
the ones in charge, right? So like,
Yeah.
and there was I want to also highlight their disposition. They didn't have like weapons like pointed at him or anything like that. There was like one of them was doing most of the talking, like calmly controlling the situation. It was obvious that they were like clearly expertise and like had expertise in like de-escalation training, right? Like
Sure.
because they had more situational awareness than I did because they had seen him come through the gate and they had probably understood that like, hey, you know, that we're hearing these reports already. Like they may have been privy to that information prior to me. So but the way they were treating him, you know, it was like, okay, whatever, you know. So but he stripped him naked, put him in the shower, had him shower right there, basically washed some of the blood off. He didn't get all of it off, which I thought was really interesting. He still had like and like you'd see, because the shower lights up, right? So you could see him walk in there and he's just like quickly like rubbing like this and this and this and this. And then they throw him some clothes and stick his ass in the med shed. I guess they had cleared it out already and made it like, you know, prisoner proof or whatever. So
Sure.
yeah. And the med shed's right there is lockable. Obviously it contains like surgeon level narcotics, you know, so you have to lock that up because you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If I remember correctly, after he was in the med shed, they just put a dude with a shotgun on him. One of the echoes, if I remember correctly, just kind of on guard with a shotty.
Exactly. Like, and from there, that's when I was called to move the truck and then to the front gate.
Brandon, you went to a different guard tower, right?
I did. I went to the A&A guard tower. I went there right when pretty much everybody started showing up at the front gate.
By everybody, you mean civilians?
Yeah, just I don't know where they're coming from. I don't feel like we've ever seen that many people in the AO before, and there was probably, I don't know, 100, 200 maybe, just out in the front gate.
It was completely surreal. It was like living in a snow globe and somebody just shaking the snow globe, and that's what it was like. It was just crazy. I mean, it was. Yeah. I can't wait. We didn't even understand there were that many people like living there. We didn't know there were that many vehicles in the area. I mean, it was like Mardi Gras, basically. I mean, it just packed full of people trying to get into our base. I mean,
was it violent?
I mean,
it was just like on the brink of violence. Like it just seemed like just any one wrong move, and it just would have been a terrible day. So we were up in the A&A tower, and they brought all the bodies to the front gate. So I was up there with 2 other Americans and an Afghan. So we're simultaneously trying to pull security, 200-300 meters out, because we can see guys peeking behind grape rows. But at the same time, you got 200 people right below me with 16 bodies. It was just, I don't know. It was just a surreal moment.
So did they bring every one of the bodies to the VSP, or was it a handful of them? I mean,
I'm pretty sure they brought all of them with back of trucks. Some of them were just kind of being carried, like above their heads, things like that.
Yeah, it was a white truck. The image that struck me. So like I said, I went to I was told to get the vehicle from my position in Alakozai and basically drive it to the front gate. So I get the vehicle, I drive it to the front gate, and I interact with the captain, and he's like, hey, he's like, make sure the weapon is off. Like, that's the disposition, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not. I don't get in the back and gun. I like where this is completely like a bad situation. Like, the weapon is off. Like, we're putting this truck at the main gate, and that is what it is.
So kind of as a 30,000 pound barrier.
Oh, my bad. Because our front gate was literally just a piece, like a 2x4 wrapped in sea wire. And it's not stopping anything.
Yeah.
Right. With a little S turn in it. Once I parked the vehicle, I moved to the front and I stood next to the 18 Bravo. And we stood right there at the front gate. And I was just trying to be as useful as possible. Again, like, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, by this time, we had been told that it was potentially Bob had, gone and done these things, and that there was, civilians that had been being treated at Zangabad for some injuries. And, it was consistent with, this guy, this Bob. So it was just like, that was probably the harshest moment. So we went from the roof tower. I went from the op center roof tower to the DFAC, was told that it was most likely Bob that did it, and then went to go get the vehicle. Like, that was the the order.
So they pulled everybody down from their guard to go to the DFAC, correct?
Yes.
So Brandon, you were in the DFAC as well.
I was, yeah. I was.
And who was it that briefed you guys?
The team captain at first.
The SF team captain.
Yes, SF team captain.
And the 18 Echo, who was standing in for the Zulu, who, because of the IED strike, we lost him. So we had no Zulu at the time, right? So
was he just like a TBI or something like that, or?
Yeah, there was a couple. We had one, and I believe he was the other one. There may have been another, the 18 Fox as well. I'm not really sure if he TBI'd from that one, but there was that vehicle. But it was at least, yeah. So they were not at full capacity as well. Which
yeah. So and he basically told you that they were getting reports that there were civilians coming into Zangabad, that they had radio chatter that it looked like Robert Bales had gone off and done what he did.
Right. That was the first, and we had heard it was some like 5, like we've got the number of reports of like five, wounded, or five KIA or something like that.
Yeah, initially the numbers were low.
Yeah, and we were like, okay, like, not that that's any way explainable, but perhaps it was some confusion, right? Again, we're still thinking perhaps, like, in my head, I'm still thinking kidnapper or something. There has to be some other reason why this is happening other than just this just happened, right? Like, there is no explainable, rational reason for this because I'm trying to be as rational as possible.
Sure. Well, yeah, you got to explain it away, right? Because, I mean, how the fuck could somebody do that?
The human brain takes over and you start rationalizing, and it's like,
Sure.
and then when you're faced with the cold facts and it's in that, the moment haunts me because we're sitting, our chow hall DFAC, whatever you want to call it, was a Connex, right? Like a tiny little thing, and it had like 2 little benches on it. So we all basically were fitting in there. So it was like a tight fit. And, you could see the pain in his eyes. You could tell the man didn't want to say it. That he just like couldn't, you could tell he was processing it. And you could tell based on the way he was delivering the information that this was real. Like, this is the worst of all things. This is, like, it's just, again, like being in a snow globe and everything being shaken around. That's what it was. Yeah. It was like, we're inverted at the time. It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the reaction to the other? I mean, obviously, Brandon, you were there, but what about the other soldiers and NCOs that were present? What was their reaction to what they were hearing?
I would just say complete disbelief. I felt like it took maybe 2 or 3 days for everybody to even process what was happening. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think everybody was just in complete shock and just, like, what is going on? It was even more surreal because we're sitting there. I want to say it was later on, and then Obama's on the news talking about what's going on, literally. Yeah. Where we're at. It was just a surreal moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CNN pictures from inside. We're watching CNN from inside of our tiny chow hall of images of outside of our, base. And it's like, oh my God. Like, and this is like, okay. And I was wondering kind of like how this would get to the news, cause I knew this was going to break out, but I didn't really know how. I was shocked how quickly it was. It was like, by the time we're eating lunch, it was like on the news, it was kind of like, holy cow, but, you asked about the reaction specifically. One reaction, did not sit well with me at all. And, one of the NCOs stood up and said, he did it for you guys. And that was the very first thing that anyone said. I mean, literally it was like the SF guy stopped talking. And he said that. And it put the room on tilt. Yeah, it completely changed the tone, my belief. I'm like, okay, this is now 2 times this NCO has said or acted in a peculiar manner in the last 3 hours. I'm now in the middle of a, in the middle of a firestorm. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea which way is up. And he seemed to like try to lay blame on us for this in some way. Like we're supposed to feel some kind of guilt or shame for
or
Bob's
to be grateful
actions
for some reason,
or absolve him of it. Like in our mind, we should always be remembered, no matter what happens, that this was not our fault, or that he did it for us, right? Like branding that into our minds is just kind of crazy because literally we had just found out that it was only that it was 5 people, right? So for the number to then rise so dramatically, it's like, it's just like.
And this is the same NCO that woke you guys up in the middle of the night, freshly showered and shaven and fresh head of duds.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, in tears, talking about if we put it on. I want to say he said MySpace. He might have said Facebook. Talking if we put it online, he was going to kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild. That was.
So he said that.
Yeah, and
in
like
the
completely
defect?
seriously, like.
Yeah, he said in the defect.
Yeah.
Just with the infantry guys though.
Yeah. Once the SF guys cleared out. Interesting.
What was the SF captain's reaction when he said that? When he said he did it for you guys?
I think he left.
Really?
Yeah.
I think he left, to be honest. I think both the SF guys cleared out. I think they were like, okay, like we're not going to be a party to anything that's going on in here, whatever conversation you guys are about to have. This shit is bigger than you. Like, like I'm going to walk away. Like, you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure they left. I don't believe that they said anything, but you know, I just was like, it's just such a crazy thing to say, especially because we had been told from some of the people in First Squad, the guys who were at the gate, that the first thing that Bobby said when he came through the gate was that you guys snitched on me. That was the first thing he said. That's what we were told when we were in the DFAC, right?
He told us that from his own mouth.
Yeah. So it's like, so he's talking about people snitching on him, and now you're saying he did it for us, and it's like.
So he's walking back in, literally covered in blood of these innocent civilians, and the first thing out of his mouth, more or less, is that somebody snitched on me. Jesus Christ.
So after you leave the DFAC, obviously your minds are spinning. Not just from what you've heard, but because of the reaction from that NCO, which was the same NCO that woke you up and was acting weird earlier, correct?
Yeah, correct. And he was also, we never trained up with this guy either. He was from a different
he's from
company.
HHC.
So like he deployed with us because he had a relationship with Bales.
And he was only in our platoon for maybe a month or two. Like he just showed up. He's like, I'm just a liaison. That's what he kept saying his duty position was. Like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
So he didn't deploy with you. He came to the VSP later in the deployment.
No. He came with us, but he acted like he was a liaison. He that's the way he treated himself. There's a famous incident. We went to Kandahar to go sign on a long gun because, he was from HHC, had those skills. So it was like, hey, we're going to get a long gun and we're going to use it to like target folks in the area. And he goes to sign it out. And I, of course, was the armorer. So I'm going to go with him on this detail. And so like we go sign it out. And the armorer for HHC is like, hell no, you're not getting these weapons. I'm not going to lose accountability of this. Like, there's no way I'm signing these out to you. And it was like, okay, that was the end of it. But that was really disappointing for them to, not be able to have access to those kind of like weaponry at all. So, yeah.
Interesting.
So, the day is obviously building. It's hitting the news and people are congregating outside the gate, bringing in bodies. And so, what does the rest of that day look like? What happened after things began to click and you began to make those connections that it was Bales that did all this? Obviously you saw him from the guard tower, but over the course of that day, how did that pan out for you guys?
Yo, when did Karzai's brother come out? Was it the same day or the next day?
That was later in the day.
The same day though, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so right around when he...
Yeah.
You said what?
All this melds together. It is chronological, but you have to understand that once it became bright, it was like...
Yeah. Just like chaos.
It just became... Yeah. And so we're trying to make sure we get things in the right order as much as possible, but yeah.
Because pretty much right when he was detained, Karzai's brother came out. We had a platoon of Afghan commandos come in, and then their handlers were like 2 SEAL dudes. I think a couple of JTACs came in.
Yeah, when so I'm at the gate and I'm seeing all these bodies. I'm next to the 18 Bravo, the 18 Alphas right there as well. and we're just trying to like stop these people from like bringing the bodies inside or breaching the gate. Apparently the reason why they're showing us the bodies is to make us see what like the suffering that had been caused, like make us understand that it was real. Right. So it's like, okay. Understood. They moved, so to the credit of one of the 18 Bravos, he said, okay, he saw his infantry dude just standing there watching all of this. And so I wasn't in a position to like actually be an authoritative helper at the gate. So he moved me to the same truck with Jones, my roommate. And so I was there, and that truck faced into basically south, the exact opposite direction of the Brandon and I's normal truck. And so I was there, and that gave me great viewpoint of the HLZ as well as looking down on the gate from there. So,
and Brandon, what's going on your end?
So I had guard. So my original guard shift was supposed to be like around 4 or 5. So when we came in to do the original SI check, and then we went to sleep, I was ready to go back to sleep because I had guard in like an hour. So after the truck, after we pulled out of the trucks, I went up to the ops end. I was just kind of hanging out because I really had no idea what to do. And I could see Bales as well in the med shed, just looking out the window, just a crazy look in his eye.
Yeah,
and
raving, looking like breathing crazy, like up against the up putting his face up against the glass, like breathing into it.
And then one of the other dudes who he walked by him, and he would look at me. And Bales was like, "What's up, man? You don't want to look at me, huh? You too?" I guess I won't cuss, but he's like, "You too afraid to look at me, man?" And he was basically calling him out because he wouldn't look at him. You remember there was that portion, and then pretty much after that's when I went up to the A&A tower, and a lot of it, honestly, I have a hard time remembering. I'm not gonna lie. Some of the in between stuff.
Yeah,
understandably.
But at some point, a Chinook came and took him away, right? And
then probably like midday, like around noon, maybe a little earlier than that.
Yeah, I was sitting in the truck with Jones, and we had a conversation about should one of us get out of the truck and just go shoot Bob in the med shed. Like, should we just go in the med shed and just shoot him? Like, should we just like what like what is going on here to like because that's how messed up our brains were from this moment and how much like projection of anger we had that we're just like but that's what again when I say you get two idiots talking like and they come up with a bad idea, me and Jones together is like bad, so we're just sitting there talking, like basically talking it out, and a bird comes over, and it's like flying really low, and then another bird drops down, and it's a Chinook, and you could see they're taking a really long time, like on the ground, which is usually I think we had a Chinook land once or twice previously, but they're really too big for our HLZ.
Sure. So,
they're like knocking stuff over. We had to like move trucks around to make sure that stuff could like fit. It was kind of crazy, but so the bird lands, and we find out that Bob got on the bird and got taken away to Kandahar. And then another bird lands, and a group of Afghan commandos and 2 Navy SEALs come off, and they're like providing their level of security, and they don't even go into our compound immediately. They go into the compound where the burn pit is, where we had just cleared, where the strikers had been, where the strikers eventually would end up. So they
sent strikers from Zangabad to the outside of the gate for security.
Yeah. They got there. They got there, and it was like they cut through, and you just felt like those guys were like, look, like what is going on? Because you got to remember, Zangabad was the point where, the bodies had been going already, so they had some kind of knowledge that this stuff was going on. So I mean, for them to like, they didn't really know what the hell they were walking into, and or driving into, I guess. So.
The Taliban didn't give a shit that day. In Alakozai, they fired an RPG at that Kiowa. And Najibien, they ambushed Karzai's brother.
Yeah.
They did not care that day. There was as many assets we had out that day, they did not care.
That was crazy. That was Chong, I don't know if you remember this, but the call to prayer that morning, it was completely different.
Really?
Yeah.
It was.
I think I heard the word jihad in there a couple times.
Yeah. There was, it was a straight like call to arms for everyone in the village to come to basically get justice, to find out who had done this and to hold them responsible.
Now, was there an attack? Was there an effort to breach the walls, or was there any kind of concerted effort to fire at the guard post or anything like that? Or did the crowd of civilians kind of deter that?
I would say the civilians deterred that. They tried to fire. They fired an RPG at the Kiowa in Alakozai, and then they did the ambush in Najibien, but nothing on the VSP itself that day anyway.
Correct. Yeah, it was I was on the rooftop to go to the top of the VSP, and the other 18 Bravo was up there, and the minigun was used to basically dissuade folks from trying to cross into the grape huts. So it was used defensively, just basically because it's loud and it's it's a fear striking weapon. It's kind of like being in someone's house and hearing a shotgun cock. You know what I mean? Like you're in trouble, right? So you hear like a minigun and it's just firing. Basically just to stop people from thinking that that we were just like a soft target, perhaps. But if there was anyone in the world that should have been firing at that time or is qualified to fire, it would have been an 18 Bravo, on top of the
minigun.
With a minigun, right? Like it's like, if we're going to like send a message here, it has to be the right message, right? So it can't just be indiscriminate firing or anything like that. Yeah. So.
And what was the attitude of the SF guys at the time? Because I mean, obviously you talked about earlier how when they were processing Bales, they were very calm and collected, and because I mean they're professionals, right? They go through a lot of training to do this stuff properly. But once that was all processed and like base defense kind of became the priority, were they racing around or were they still like calm, cool as a cucumber?
It was interesting because you could see they were getting pulled. Every one of them was on the net or some kind of communication device to hire or some kind of enabling force that was on the way. When Karzai's brother eventually showed up and we treated their casualty, that was when it was kind of crazy that like, okay, that's when it kind of kicked off again. It was kind of like the Taliban were like, oh, okay, here's Karzai's brother trying to, make a political statement, and we have the opportunity to make even more of a political statement by stopping him from being able to even access this area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he wanted to go to the crime scenes, right? That was his thing. He tried to go both to Alakozai and Najibien.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and got one of his soldiers killed, at least one.
No, they got into a gunfight.
Yeah, they got into a gunfight. Guy got shot in the head.
You said that was down at Najibien?
On the way to, yeah.
Okay.
They brought him back in a Razor, on a Razor scooter. Not scooter, but with the Razor thing. And our medic had his thumb in the back of the dude's head, trying to like stop the bleeding as much as possible. By this time, we had the battalion, or the brigade or battalion surgeon. I'm not really sure, but that guy had located to our VSP from CAF. So he was there, and our two medics, and I don't believe the 18 Delta was there, but the two medics basically worked to try to save this guy's life. And then when it was not successful, they put him in a body bag, and it was it was just I mean, nothing. There was no room to put him anywhere else. You couldn't leave him because in the shed, because we may have more casualties. So they just, when he expired, they put him in a body bag and put him right outside in right in front of the B hut. Like
right by the med shed. Yeah, he's in that body bag just twitching, man. It was a trip.
Yeah, just seeing it twitch, and like, because we were there to pull, like I got pulled down from the op center roof, which was my secondary location. Like I was almost always there. So, because I had a 203, I called down to basically like make sure like, something like didn't happen to the body or something. So I'm just standing there watching this like body twitch, and I'm like, okay. Eventually I just kind of like was like, okay, I'm just gonna like, somebody else is gonna take care of this, right? Like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like this is, it was one of those like orders that somebody gives you in like a complete hurry, and they kind of forget about it, So
sure, yeah. They don't mean for you to stand over it all.
Right. Yeah. Right. But exactly. It was just like, hey, just watch this and make sure nothing crazy, like bad happens. Like, okay. And I'm watching like the general area, and then you see like, the body twitch, and it's like, one of Karzai's soldiers, you feel bad. But.
So by the end of I mean, obviously that whole day is very stressful, and there's a crowd outside. They're yelling. You're seeing yourself on CNN. There's A huge influx of assets onto the base. But you've been up since 3:15 in the morning. Did you even go to bed that night? Did you try? Were you able to? Like, what was it like when everything was done at that night?
No, this is where the story continues. Like,
pretty much everybody was up trying to figure out what was going on. Like, nobody was sleeping that night at all.
It was the first time that we had all been located back together again. By that time, we had all become tier 1 assets. So there was, you could hear drones flying above you for the first time, which was like really nice to hear. And like, you could hear like there was planes just constantly buzzing. And so you felt safer, perhaps. I don't know.
For sure.
I felt more at ease. And so at night, you can't really see anything down the roads anyway. I mean, I still had 7 Deltas, right? So me sitting in a truck trying to like peek out, is not really going to be doing a whole lot. Especially when the trucks are like, we had them like half position, so you can kind of like stand on them, and see over it or whatever. So yeah, it was just like, okay, we left the trucks up and we finally located in the bee hut, and that's when we started talking to people and being like, yo, what did you see? What did you see? What did you see? Right. And that's where we came. And that's where we started getting, talking to one of the guy that was on guard, one of the soldiers on guard. And he mentioned again to us that the original Afghan, soldier at the gate had said that two Americans had come in and one had left. Right. So we're like, okay, and that's the first time we had even talked, so it was like, he's telling us that. And then we're telling him, hey, remember when he came in the morning and, like this person looked different, and remember that. And like, we're all trying to we're playing a game. We have no idea what the game is. Right.
Sure.
We're all just like trying to rember things,
trying to make sense of all the information.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we definitely want to get to that discrepancy later.
Sure.
Actually, probably in the next episode, we really want to get into that.
Sure.
Because that's an important part about the story that we're trying to tell, is that there were parts of the story that were glossed over in the 15-6. Because that is mentioned in the 15-6, the discrepancy between the number of soldiers that went out the gate.
Right. And he testified in an Article 32 hearing to that, that he said that there was, that 2 soldiers had come in the gate and 1 had left. So
yeah. So we're definitely going to readdress that. But that night, I guess, and then leading into the next day, because it's all like one event at this point. The night, day, whatever. You're not sleeping. And you said the first day the crowd was fairly peaceful, but on a razor's edge. What was it like the second day? What did they disperse? Were they there still, or did it get violent?
If I remember, they were gone by the second day.
Yeah.
Were they?
If I remember correctly. Yeah. Then that's when. So the second day is when our other 2 NCOs got detained and taken away. We didn't see them again.
Right.
And
was one of those NCOs the one that made the comment in the DFAC?
Yeah, he was.
Yes. Yeah. And CID had been on the ground now.
Sure.
There's a female staff sergeant. And I mentioned that she's female because she slept in the op center, which was highly irregular, right? But because there was no female housing for her, that's where she slept. So it became incumbent upon some of the soldiers that we needed to talk to her and let her know what we knew.
Your concerns, sure.
Yeah, like this NCO had threatened to kill us if we put anything on Facebook. We know that one of our soldiers has said that two people were out and 1 person came back. We know that his reaction in the DFAC, it's like, okay, we see people throwing bottles away in the burn pits. We get told, one of our soldiers gets told to like cover the burn pit with his like front end loader thing. So like, it just became, okay, like there's clearly
like
more at
alcohol
foot here.
bottles, pill bottles.
I mean, you can this is one of the things when I was on guard from 6 to 7 with one of the other soldiers, you could literally see people walking from the containerized housing units over to the burn pit right in front of you. It's like, 30 meters in front of you, and you could hear the bottles like clanging together in the glass bottles. It's
so alcohol.
I never saw any steroid or anything like that. That was one of the things I talked about. But only alcohol that I ever saw.
Right. And that was part of the 15-6 later, was that there was a big shocker alcohol use on the base, which I think most people that deployed have understood that there's a little bit of a looser restriction on with the SFODAs and the other special operations forces as regards to the ban on alcohol in country. It's still in place, but there's a little bit of a
wiggle room there for them.
Yeah, and I'm sure Luke has heard wonderful stories about some of the raging parties in Iraq back in the day when SF would throw their ragers on their compounds. So that's definitely a part of their history and their heritage. Yeah. And that's not taking anything away from the SF guys. They're incredibly professional, elite forces. But and it's not just them. The SEALs just had a big, deal with all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure it's prevalent, in other special operations communities as well. So I'm not singling out the SF guys for being having alcohol in deployment. It's just kind of it's a thing. It's not an unusual thing.
To my eyes, the only time I ever saw anyone, drunk or visibly like smelling like alcohol was on Christmas, New Year's, and then that was it. Like that was it. Like it was not something where it was like a random Wednesday I would smell alcohol. Again, we lived in a closet when we first were there. So we lived inside the op center closet. Like all 11 privates were in a very small room until we built a bee hut that we could live in. So we were not in any of the housing areas. We didn't interact with SF in that way because there's no need to. There was no need for us to be all in their personal private space. It's ridiculous. So I just assumed that they were acting with the same professionalism that I tried to display, because when we had guard at night, we were the ones pulling guard. We were actually pulling guard, right? Yeah. Like it wasn't like we were out there joking around, like hanging out all night, what I mean, playing cards. Yeah. It was, exactly. It's like we were actually pulling guard. So to think, that someone could be drinking, it seemed really irresponsible to me. Yeah. And then to find out that, my own NCOs were taking part in the same thing, it just felt like a complete abdication of responsibility, and a real failure of leadership, to be honest. So,
but at the same time, I've always been of the opinion that if you're not on duty, and you're on deployment and you want to have a drink, you should be able to, and that restriction's in place. Obviously, there's also a cultural aspect to that as well. But it does sound that at least that if that was going on, it wasn't interfering with those guys' duties. So that's
definitely not.
At least. Yeah.
Well, there was, except for the one time when one of the Bravos was late to a mission. I don't know if you remember that, Chong. He came running out. I don't know if he was drinking, but he overslept. That was really funny. That was one of the funniest things ever because he basically got yelled at. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining.
They are human, I guess.
Exactly. Alarm clocks. Blame Apple, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So at what when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that there eventually was an attack on the VSP. I believe it was suicide bombers. Could you kind of tell us what happened there?
So the suicide bomber thing was intel that we had that two 19-year-olds decided basically from these actions that they were going to blow themselves up. It was the rationale given for leaving one of the trucks at the gate. And basically, like, why we offloaded the truck with ammunition and like making sure that it was basically like a dead piece of wood, essentially. That if somebody decided they wanted to blow themselves up on, that's where it would go. We were fortunate never to have any suicide bombers actually attack the gate, but the area became essentially unwalkable, undrivable, unlivable. The attacks, small arms fire, not even accurate small arms fire, but it became so persistent that it was just like they were just almost kind of like messing with us. Yeah, it's like they were messing with us, and we also knew that the entire country was on a 2-week like safety stand down essentially. Like like this. When you think about it, this thing like this Bales action it caused a lot of like ripple waves and a lot of obviously a lot of issues. But singularly, it could have been the thing that lost the war. Like I'm not saying that Afghanistan was ever going to be survivable, but I think it's potentially sped the timeline to our exit and so forth, because it was just so obvious that all the things that we were trying were not going to work, right? Like that we were just, even doing this VSP mission was just like, it's going to have limited success compared to what folks may think it should or would have. Right.
It was a real a blight on the political atmosphere at the time, and the kind of the narrative that was being delivered to people. And it's interesting you say how it had these reverberating waves that spread throughout the country, but also to us because we were walking into that area. So we didn't know what to expect because it was such a crazy, wild thing that had only happened just a few times over the course of both wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, and there was also the 2ID kill squad. People forget
5th
about.
Brigade.
Yeah. That was probably 2 years before that, where they were going out, and it was a very similar kind of character personality to Robert Bales, the guy that was a squad leader for that squad, and they were encouraging privates to murder civilians, but they weren't doing it, in one big mass shooting. They were doing it over the course of the deployment. There's an excellent documentary about it. I think it's called The Kill Team, that kind of explores that and its own controversies. But those events did not give 2ID a very good reputation, and I think that followed them honestly all the way through their time that they owned Panjwai and Zari. I mean, it was 2ID's AO all the way up until they gave it up to the Afghans. So it's an astute observation that it hurt, and I am actually surprised that they continued to have that Indian patch, running around Afghanistan for 2 years after Bales did what he did. I would have thought the gut reaction would have been at least to rebrand or something, or I don't know. It's interesting.
They rebranded now, I believe. It's the Arrowhead Brigade. The brigade is gone at least. So the unit I believe still exists, the battalion. But
yeah.
So, how much longer were you guys at the VSP? I mean, I'd imagine it was pretty quick from this day going down to you guys getting shuttled out the back door, right?
We were there for about another month.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It was.
Yeah. And we weren't allowed to leave. We couldn't do any patrols. We couldn't leave the VSP. We couldn't get supplies. We couldn't, so especially when the air was red, like these dudes would get 25, 50 meters to the VSP and just start blasting.
Yeah. I mean,
so you guys get hit a lot in that month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see an increase in small arms and stuff, or?
Definitely.
Yeah, it almost became daily. We just call it tick 30, right around 5:30 when the sun was going down in the west.
Yeah,
and we just knew.
There was one point where we're giving a brief to one of the groups that was coming in to relieve us, and it was like, just so you know, we're about to get into a, and then sure enough, there's the firefight starting. So it was like that was literally a schedule. You could just I mean, it became a circadian rhythm at the time. Like you're gonna get into a firefight, and then you're gonna drink water for a little while, then you're gonna go work out, and then you're gonna watch a movie, then you're gonna have guard. And it just became and then you're gonna shower, and then you're gonna have guard again, and then you're gonna you know what I mean? It just became these wild things that we just got completely used to, and Our LT arrived, which is probably one of the game changing things, because we actually got to see a new face. We also got to have one of our. He called himself a chaplain. I don't remember if you remember. He was like a counselor or chaplain. You remember that, Chong?
The SF chaplain.
SF chaplain.
Yeah.
He talked to us, and that guy was.
That dude was badass, man. He was handing out waters in the middle of a firefight. He got it on video. It's crazy.
Yeah, he just was here you guys go. You guys, hydrate. We're yeah, Roger, thanks, sir. You know what I mean? It's he's he told us his whole life story is incredible, and he's chief morale officer, man. I tell you what, he had it. He had I don't know if he knew. Maybe he thought we were all kids, but he opened up a box and there's nothing but candy bars in it.
Hell yeah!
And to start, the icebreaker was here, everyone take a candy bar. And it was like, we looked at him and I'm taking 2 of those candy bars. Like, I don't care. Like, welcome to Belambai. Like, I'm taking 2 of those candy bars. Like, back up. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
the best part is when we had to do the initial, we're supposed to go to CAF for initial investigation, like 2-3 weeks after that. And our company commander came out. So we flew back with him. So third squad, Alexander's squad, flew back to CAF. And as soon as we landed.
We think we're going home.
As soon as we landed, the CO just gets off the bird and just doesn't say anything, just keeps walking. And then some sergeant major comes and goes, no, get back on the bird. You guys are going back to Belambai. You're not allowed to leave. We're like, bro, we're already at CAF. It was Thursday night. We were all ready for salsa night. It was just soul crushing.
Yeah. That was crazy. And basically looking back on it, we were essentially his PSD. Like that was what we were, but no one had the balls or guts or foresight to tell us that we, in fact, packed for no reason. We cleared out our rooms for no reason. Like we, in fact, were not going home. We were literally going right back to Belambai. Like that was just another kick in the dick. Like just another kick in the dick in this whole thing. Just like,
because at this point, I'm sure you guys were just ready to go home, you know?
Well, we didn't know where we were going. We were told initially we were staying in Afghanistan. And that we were going to go to another VSP that has no ticks, and like as Bales said, Sandals, Afghanistan, where some of the other units from some of the other squads from our unit went. Like they had a nice time, and they had like nothing really to do, and they would go on like these like half-hour long patrols. Like this is him telling us this, right?
Sure.
Him giving us the update like of what the other squads are up to. It's like, hey, what's so and so squad up to? Oh, they're hanging out, getting a tan. Oh, what are these guys doing? Oh, they're making a call me maybe video. Oh, okay, that's cool.
That's right. That was one of your.
That was our third platoon,
wasn't it?
That was from our company. So like you could see the not all experiences are the same when you talks about combat veterans here. You know what I mean? It's like very different, and just because we were in Bales' squad and we got picked for that mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
sure.
Yeah. Shout out to the boys that did that video. That was exceptionally well done.
Yeah, I know all those guys. Nothing but love to them, man. Yeah, they look good. Still watching.
They did. They look good, man. Yeah. Everybody's in good shape.
I hope they got some. I hope they got contacted by the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders because they definitely put the work in.
Yeah, Miami Dolphin cheerleaders.
Oh, it was Miami Dolphins. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because the only reason why we know that is because they sent us a calendar, and it was probably. It was the best piece of mail we got the entire time there. So
I think we wrote Dolphins. 45 teams, and the Houston Texans and the Miami Dolphins are the only ones that sent us anything.
Yes. So shout out to those 2 organizations for actually caring. I appreciate it.
That's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
But you did eventually leave Belambai for CAF.
Yeah.
And what was that under the pretenses of the investigation?
That was a story. That's a story into itself. Just the movement. We basically load all our stuff up. We usually would drive, right? But the B team and all of these other assets had been there and they drove. And we were essentially being taken out of there the same way that we were brought in, which was as just infantry dudes in the back, as Bubba's in the back.
I gunned my way out. I was
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, they wouldn't let me drive. They're like, no, you're good. You're gonna just sit. I'm like, okay,
just sit in the back.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep. So we get to CAF, and they have us dismount at a strange looking facility sort of thing, and they have us dump all of our gear. And that was when I saw the most sergeant majors I've ever seen in my entire life. It looked like the academy graduation. It was insane. And all of the sergeant majors either picked one of us or a duffel bag or a item or, a pair of gloves. And they would just go through it to make sure we had no contraband. I remember they got mad at the medics because he had those pops.
Fentanyl pops?
Fentanyl pops.
It's like, well, I'm a medic. I'm signed for all of this stuff. And they were like, but because their orders were find drugs, find contraband.
These
guys are from
pills,
Belambai.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. These guys are from Belambai. Like the orders are to they search everything.
You're a medic. Why do you have
our helmets,
medicine?
everything. Yeah.
But essentially, we spent maybe another 3 weeks to a month on CAF, and pretty much from like 08 to 1700, we had to be on standby for any sort of questioning, any sort of investigations. And then from 1700, to 08, we were to do whatever we want to go to the boardwalk, things like that. But we also pulled guard on Camp Brown. So I don't know who was pulling guard before us, but we were the only ones pulling guard on Camp Brown.
Yeah, we were.
Which was the SF compound within CAF.
Right. And also where we stayed. We stayed inside that compound. Like we stayed in like they basically got us look like a double wide trailer. It's kind of like what it looked like on the inside, but it was just a flat, like empty trailer, and we just kind of all just found a place to lay down. Yeah, find a corner. You got a cot, and like we just kind of hung out in there. We have some great pictures from in there because these guys decide to buy stuff from the boardwalk, like Afghan hats and stuff, and like show it off.
Man jams.
Yeah, it's ridiculous stuff.
Spring Break 2012.
Spring breaks, Spring Break on Kandahar Airfield, all those good stuff. Yeah.
So,
but, I mean, at least you were on the SF compounds. You guys got to eat pretty good.
Oh,
yeah, it wasn't too bad.
It was the best.
Not bad.
They had.
We'll cut this out. But how many cold beers did they have on station?
None. I didn't see any.
Yeah,
I bet they had that locked down at that point.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
Like
I bet a year before that you would have been.
Yeah. We took our patches off. That was one of the things because we didn't want to be like readily identified because by this time, it'd be kind of weird. A bunch of infantry guys with these same patches as Bobby Bales walking around Camp Brown or whatever. So we would have our patches, like we would put them on when we would go to the boardwalk or stuff. But when I was walking around Camp Brown, I would never have my patches on. But there are also like a lot of transient tents, or not tents, but like hard structures there. So there's like showers, which was like
amazing,
like a hot shower.
Like real showers.
These are the same showers that we would drive to Kandahar for, right? So now I'm just like able to get them
every day.
They had a gym, and then they had them. We had to work at the mail place too, which was kind of interesting. So like they would like have us help sort the mail, and we got to like interact with some of the pogues that were there, and like the SF pogues, and like talk to them, and that was really interesting. Like get some career advice and life advice from those folks. So yeah, it was it was very interesting. Yeah.
So you're there. Was it SOTIF that was running the investigation, or was it you just happened to be there because they were trying to keep you away from everybody?
I don't know. I don't think the people we talked to weren't part of the SOTIF. They were
okay. So they just had you guys there because they could kind of isolate you from the rest of the
right. Yeah, easily. Yeah.
I want to say the people we talked to were CID from Fort Bragg, but they weren't the SOTIF. I don't believe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't CID from 2ID.
Not at, what I don't believe it was at Camp Brown. I don't think it was initially. I don't.
It was next door. We had to go out of the compound, and there was another like secure VTC room that we would use.
Okay.
That the only reason why I know that is because on my second interview, a German general popped up like on the screen. She was like 25 feet tall. And she's like trying to see if there's a meeting, and I was like, no, it's just Private Alexander just like waiting to like be deposed again by a 1-star general. Like no big deal. Like no.
Well, that's a good point. So I think if I remember correctly, it was like the division level command at RC South was 82nd at that time, because I remember there was a bunch of 82nd people running around Massamgar. So that probably makes sense that would be who you talk to. And so how long were you guys at Kandahar before you got sent home? And what was it like, I guess, dealing with the interrogations and the questioning? Was it fairly routine? Were they cool about it? Were they aggressive with the questioning?
For me personally, I didn't feel it was aggressive. I thought everybody was pretty cool, especially like once they realized we weren't out there. Because the initial reports it was a whole platoon was out there. Right. Kind of coming out. And then as, more information was coming out, that they realized it was just one guy. So they were, it was a little overwhelming at first because I was a PFC talking to a 1-star general. Sure. But, other than that, like they were really cool, and they made it like really easy and comfortable to talk to. And it wasn't too bad, but just had to be on standby every day, essentially for about 3 weeks until about 1700. But I didn't think it was video games.
Yeah. It's like a lot of Skype, like trying to Skype random people, trying to talk to people. Because we had internet at Belambai, but it was like kind of, it was spotty at that, obviously.
Pakistani internet.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like this is not entertainment. So it was a lot of DVDs and like again watching Glee
Yeah.
and like
Trading hard
you know,
drives.
Dude,
Yeah, trading hard drives. Yeah, exactly.
when you talk about being there on CAF, I can smell
Yeah.
like the interior of an NWR tent with like the rubbery smell with the dust and
Yeah,
like
freedom.
with video games and TVs going and stuff.
Yeah.
I can smell it. Wow,
Yep.
that's weird. That's sorry that we can cut that out. That was just a weird sensory moment
Yeah.
for me there.
Well, what was weird is we couldn't go anywhere for between 8 1700. Like we were stuck. So like you had to be on
Yeah.
recall. So
Just sitting there waiting.
you're just like waiting for your opportunity. You don't know. Like the first person to talk to them was one of the only NCO we had left, and he went to talk to them, and his reaction when he came back was like, "Oh man, that's not good." And so we were all like, "Oh," like we were kind of like, "Oh man," I was like, "Oh crap," you know. I'll
Sure.
never forget the colonel. He was the guy that was like probably the assistant for the 1-star, which makes sense. You know, he was like probably helping him out on the team. And he briefed me before. He was like, make sure you say sir a lot. I'm like, I'm thinking like, okay, that's what we're worried about. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
Because he
That's
said
what we're
initially,
worried
he's like,
about.
all right, guys, we're going to be real comfortable, you know, so be real low key. So,
Yeah.
you know, the one dude from one of our hillbillies just refused to call him sir, just treated him like a buddy. And I think that just rubbed him the wrong way.
Right. They were both
That's
both
good.
from Arkansas. Like I remember that.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it's like
Nice.
yeah. Meanwhile, the 1-star is like a Rhodes Scholar and like
Sure.
like went to
Right.
Oxford. You know what I mean? And it's like he's like, yeah, I grew up in Arkansas, but like I'm not.
I
We're-
left that behind. a long time
Yeah,
ago.
right. Exactly. He worked like because that was one of the interesting things is we had access to Google, so I Googled him, you know, and you find out about
Yeah.
the guy, and I'm like, oh
Sure.
wow, that's pretty interesting. Like just to make sure, because I don't trust anybody at this point, right?
No,
like
no.
Yeah.
I'm making sure that this guy is actually a real person. I'm not talking to some like fake suit who is just like, you know, like asking me random questions about, you know, like the command climate of Belambai. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, for sure. So when you guys get to CAF, you kind of get your initial grilling from CID or whoever, and then you pack up and they ship you back to the good old US of A, right?
they gave us a lieutenant. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
one of the things. Like we had this random lieutenant who was like, hey guys, I'm in charge of you now. It's like the
Literally.
worst cold opening ever. It was like, okay, all right, this is not going to work, man. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we've got needs, you know, like,
He's like a butter bar from the S shop.
yeah,
Yeah.
like he just didn't know enough. And then he came through clutch. And the one thing that he came through clutch with was he asked us, how do you guys want to go home?
Yeah.
Do you want to fly military or civilian air? Civilian air will take longer, but you know, it's civilian air. And we were like, we want to fly on civilian air.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, packed
So-
on the back of a C-17.
Exactly. And that was like the greatest. Oh, that was so great. I can't explain to you how amazing that was.
But
to
the flight
fly.
pattern was just dumb.
Oh yeah.
We
I
flew
mean,
to
we did-
Kyrgyzstan,
again,
Turkey, Germany, and then what was it? DC, Texas, and then back to
Dallas. Yeah,
Really?
DC, Dallas, Seattle. The mistake that was made was leaving a butter bar in charge of us in a civilian airport, unsupervised, with a bunch of dudes who have just spent 5 months going through probably the worst combat experience since My Lai. Chong, would you agree? So
Massacre wise.
yeah, massacre.
Massacre wise, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, it's
The
obviously
only, I'm pretty sure.
yeah like, that we know about, right? So it's like
True.
it was wild. I mean, as soon as we got to Germany, it was like, oh, this place has beers open, and like this is a bar, and like we can buy beer here, and it was just insane. It got pretty bad. So we did one of the legs of the flight. Our medic threw up in the back of the plane.
Nice.
And that was kind of like, okay, this is not good. Meanwhile, one of our SOC gunners is getting dating advice from the flight attendant because she finds him very nice looking. So it was like completely like exactly what we wanted. Like we were just
Sure.
like, yes, we're people again. We weren't wearing our patches. And we, all of our gear was checked all the way forward. So we didn't have to fall in on that. So it was just like, that was like the first time that we got to be kind of like together and take a breath, you know, because we actually knew we were going home, you know. So
Right.
Yeah. Then after about that 2-day flight, we landed in Seattle. Immediately off the plane, we get ushered into this little closet by like a captain or something. We had to sign no contact orders immediately. First thing we did back in the States, have no contact with Bales and no security details, anything like that.
And were you allowed to have contact with each other, or were they limiting your contact with each other?
With each other was fine. Just with the Bales, we were off limits.
You landed at SeaTac, right? Mm-hmm. And they bust you to JBLM, and the first thing they did was slapped you guys with no contact orders. So
we were still in SeaTac. We weren't even back at Fort Lewis yet.
You were at SeaTac when
we literally stepped off the plane. They put us in a room.
Off the plane. It was off the plane. You, and you over here. You over here. Let's go. It was like,
I mean, they had to put some logistics into that too, because it's not like you can rent rooms at the freaking
It might have been the USO they put us in. Maybe it might have been the USO.
It was, but it was like follow us. Like right by baggage claim. Opened a room up, threw us in there, and it was like sign this. It's like, okay, what is it? It's like sign it. Okay, what is it? You have the opportunity to read it, and because of who I am, I was like, okay, I'm going to take my time and read it. And, you know, not exactly endear myself to the the very upset officer who is here at SeaTac to escort a bunch of junior soldiers home from Afghanistan, right? Like, probably got better
that
things
was
to
the
do.
no contact order stating you could have no contact with Staff Sergeant Bales
For 1 year.
And that was kind of a precursor to what we'll talk about next week, which was kind of your treatment, the treatment of you guys by the Army after you returned. And then the process of the investigation, the trial, and then we really want to get into what you think happened. We kind of purposely skirted around the edges of that on this episode because I wanted to stick to the facts that we can know and we can prove, or the things that you personally saw or heard. But I want to give you guys a chance in the next episode to put the pieces together for us and paint the picture. So next week on the Panjwai podcast will be the conclusion, part 3 of our conversation with James and Brandon about the Panjwai Massacre. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Panjwai Podcast. If you liked what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. New episodes every Monday on all major podcast platforms, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit www.thepanjwaipodcast.com for more information.